I don't know, but at the same time, it's not the same, you know, as seeing those people like, you know, in Charlevoix. You're in Charlevoix County still, you know, at the Charlevoix meetings. I love going to those meetings, man, you know, and I can't wait till they open back up. I guess in June, officially, they open back up. And I can't wait, man. Tom, Jeremy, I mean, I can list a ton of people, you know, that are anonymous, but, you know, there's those people that I miss, I miss seeing, man. And I miss the interaction. And would they come over to my house? Probably not. You know, especially Tom. He'd probably be like, no, I don't trust Winfield.
I bet you would.
But just to have that.
If you remember, that contact is key. And like I said, when I did my amateur hour podcast, that contact, especially in the beginning for me, you know, I knew a lot of those guys when I walked in the door because I'd been there before and didn't follow through. And you can get inside of a world that you don't want to be in, and just somebody grabbing your shoulder or shaking your hand, that human touch can bring you right back to reality out of a place you didn't need to go. And we're missing that. And I guess part of my passion is, A, I don't like to criminalize somebody doing something that is going to make them better. And B, the other reason is, you know, I live alone. And, you know, some people have another person or their kids or their significant other or their parents or whatever. This is a tough time to be by yourself because you don't want to get somebody else sick. You don't want to put them at risk. But, you know, how do you balance out whose rights are whose rights? You know, whose rights trump whose others' rights? And that's a trick.
And that's kind of what you were talking about in your podcast. And that's something that, and so hold on, because I was going to back this up earlier, and then we just got right off into going. But you said that was your last podcast, or are you going to keep it going, or you're just thinking, you know, I don't have time for that, and that's not my thing. And
I think I'm just going to wrap it up. You know, I'm not going to get rid of it, like you know, blast it off the air or whatever. But I don't think that's my medium. You have it nailed down, and you've got a solid, huge following. And when I backed it down a little bit, I haven't brought the people back, and I think writing is a better way for me to communicate for some reason. I think I'm better at that than the podcast. Maybe I would have done better, you know, with guests. I know a couple that I did with people did well, but you know, I think I need to focus on my strengths and not try to develop something else at this point anyway.
Yeah.
I have that many strengths, so I really need to focus on them.
Yeah, go with what you're good at. And I thought the podcasts were great, man. But it's one thing for somebody here listening to it going, oh, Derek just sat down and turned the mic on and talked for 30 minutes and turned it off. It doesn't really work that way. And, you know, like how you pointed out, you're like, oh, I already did this show like 8 times or whatever, 5 times. I've deleted the rest of them, and I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's hard. And, you know, Anna, I don't know if you listen to her podcast, Broken and Beautiful.
I haven't yet.
You know, she does it by herself too, and I think was making her have a hard time. And it's not that I'm like on her ass, like, "Hey, Anna, you gonna do another podcast?" You know, I don't ever say that to her, but I think she kind of feels the pressure, like, "Oh, damn, I need to do one." Because I thought I was like, pick a day, you know, and it's important to be consistent with it. You know, if you're gonna do it on Monday, do it every Monday. I don't care if you don't feel like it. I don't care if you don't have anything to say. Even if you're on there for 5 minutes, do it. You know, be that consistent guy. Because one thing you'll notice if you go through and look for recovery podcasts, you'll find some. And the last one that they did might have been March. And then one before that was back in December. The one before that was back in November. And you're like, well, this is supposed to be a recovery podcast, but they just do them when they feel like it. You know, and that's why, you know, with the 217 recovery podcast, I had to make sure, you know, consistency, you know, 4 times a week, you know, give somebody. And even if they don't listen to all 165 episodes or however many there are, at least I'm giving them something. They can look at it and go, oh, this guy's still doing it, you know, or if you flip through the pages, you're like, that guy, he stopped. Oh, he's probably drunk again, you know, like you just start thinking like bad things, like, well, that guy must have fell off. You know, it looked like he had a good run there for a minute, but yeah, and, and so I tell Anna that, but she is in the process, I guess, of building a studio. I know she just got a computer, and I showed her pictures from my studio. She's like, what the hell, man? That's awesome. She's like, I want one. And she's going to get another microphone so she can have guests. I showed her how to use Hangouts on Google to call, like I'm calling you today, and it makes it a lot easier, and it's a lot easier to have somebody else on, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, to do it alone, and sometimes you have to, and it can get a little bit into your head. And like you said, you're into writing, and if you ever want to write a blog on the 217 Recovery website, man, let me know. I'll shoot you the password. I'll invite you to it, and
cool.
Go to
I
town.
might do that. Take care of that.
Yeah, I mean, it just doesn't cost. I mean, we already paid for the website, so I mean, that doesn't cost me anything, to have somebody else contribute something that someone else might find useful, and that's kind of what we were trying to do with 217 Recovery. I don't know if you know Janisha Cole, the color J.
Yeah, of course.
She writes a blog now on
Yep.
217 Recovery, so I was pretty excited about that. And she told me, she was like, "Yeah, I think I'm gonna start writing a blog." I'm like, "Do you have a website?" She's like, "No." Well, I got one. You want to just put it on there? She's like, "Could I?" I'm like, "Absolutely." And it's just one of those things. If I can help somebody else, and now she has a purpose and she has a place in 217 Recovery, and it gives her self-esteem, and it gives her an outlet to blow off steam. And
Yeah.
I don't know if people are contacting her. They probably are, saying, "Hey, I really dig that." And one thing about blogs is it's a lot easier for people to reach out and tell you, "Hey, I feel that way too." And, with the podcast, it's not, I mean, some people are like, "Hey man, good podcast." And you're like, "Yeah, okay. Did you listen to it?" "Oh yeah, man." "Okay. What'd you think about this?" "Oh, I don't know. I was driving."
I see I got zero. Yeah.
Like, nobody's listened to it, man. And they're like, "Oh, well," but at least if, if they're writing you back saying, "Hey," and it's right there, and if they feel inspired to write back and say, "Hey, that I really love that," that's an option for them. And I think that they offer that feedback, and not that we need the feedback, but it does help. It keeps us going. When Kevin from St. Louis, he'll write me and say, "Hey man, still listening, loving it," and it's like he always comes around at the same time where I'm like, "Man, I don't know," or I'm maybe doubting myself a little bit, and then boom, it just takes that one sometimes that you just boost you right back up in the seat, and you're just like, "All right, well, let's go back at it again today," because at least Kevin and my mom are listening. That's all I know. Kevin and my mom, man, and my girlfriend will listen later. So that's 3 listeners that I got. So I'm doing well. But
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And the feedback, it can be constructive criticism, or it can be, glowing praise. Either side of the coin is welcome, because I learn more from the constructive or the disagreements than I do, "Oh, good job." I mean, I love that stuff. I eat that shit up. But the negative stuff is where I learn my lessons, and it forces me to grow a little bit. So, and I got a lot more of that kind of feedback when I was doing the blog. So I think I'm going to get back to that. And I don't know why it's easier. I have less pressure on myself if it's an easier medium for me or what it is. But because I write this stuff out for the podcast anyway. But when I'm doing one with you, it's natural, it flows, it's good, it's fun. And then I get there by myself, like,
you just hear
I'm just looking at that microphone going, "Why are you here?"
I used to
You're mocking me with the microphone.
I used to hate looking up at the time, looking up like, "Oh, it's been this long," like, and sometimes I'll be surprised, I'll go look up like, "Oh my God, it's been 40 minutes already." But like when I first started in the radio, it was like, my job was that I was on the rock station, so it was to shut up. It was say what you need to say and get out. Just give them a little bit, tease them, and then get out. You keep your stuff under a minute. And less is more. And one time when I was in Arkansas, they're like, "Hey, we need somebody to record the public affairs show," and I'm like, "Oh, I don't really do that." It's a half-hour show, and it's just you and them. Public affairs. I'm like, "What do I know about public affairs?" I'm talking about Tom Petty and what this stripper did the other day. I don't know about public affairs. And they told me it was the volleyball team. And I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah. College volleyball team." "Oh, you count me in. I'm there, man. I'm your guy." "Are they wearing their outfits or no?" "Okay, I don't care. They're volleyball team. I'm a big fan." And so I go in there and I tell them that I love them, that I watch their games all the time. And they were like, what's your favorite, this?" I'm like, "Your uniforms." I was like, "They're a killer." I'm just like, "Oh my God." And I look up, and it seemed like I'd been talking to them for 2 hours. I look up, and it had been 5 minutes.
Oh God.
And I'm just sitting there with all these like 4 beautiful college girls and their coach. And they're just like, all right, what are you going to ask us next? And I'm like, that's kind of it. Like, I don't know. It was so awkward and weird. See what that stripper did the other day? She fell on her face, man. Broke half her teeth. Did you see that? What kept you women off the pole? Was it volleyball?
So
how much would get you on the pole? Let's play that game right now. Bring out the pole. And yeah, I don't know if that would have worked out well, but yeah, it's awkward and it's weird when you have to talk for that long. And I mean, we don't have to talk for any amount of time, really. I mean, nobody's paying us, nobody's telling us, hey, you have to talk for an hour. But we kind of want to give somebody that's listening something to listen for. So we kind of aim for, I don't know, just good content. And then when we're done, we kind of wrap it up. But yeah, it takes some getting used to, man. And more power to. Not saying that if someone's listening right now and they were thinking about starting a recovery podcast, I mean, you can do it. You can absolutely do it. Don't let anybody tell you can't. And it's different than.
And I encourage it. It's really fun, and it is fun when you got a good guest. I mean, like when I did one with Claire in England, she was wonderful, and I did one with my old buddy Cliff from high school that we've been buddies for 30 years. And the difference in opinion that just comes out, it's not planned ahead. It's not this. And all of a sudden Cliff starts talking about weed. And like, dude, okay, this is his deal though. And that's one of the things that we learn in recovery is that everybody gets to their definition of recovery a different way. Mm-hmm. And that, I think that's what's keeping me really going right now is that open-mindedness that I didn't have before. And I think a lot of us, and I know for sure you, based on our chats, that the open-mindedness, it comes with that clarity comes with this recovery thing. Mm-hmm. And man, I can't imagine, like you said, I cannot imagine going through these times with a bottle in my hand. Probably wouldn't be here talking to you.
Oh, yeah. No, you wouldn't be. I would have called and you wouldn't have answered. You probably wouldn't have ever answered. You probably never would have wrote me back. But,
at that point you might, because you're just like, A, I was horrible for keeping commitments when I was drinking, and B, who knows if we'd have survived it. Because, I mean, $1,000 a week in unemployment, and you just pay your bills and drink? Okay.
Yeah. I got nothing to do
I got time for that.
I'll even pay my rent 4 months in advance. And see, I probably would have told my family members or friends that I had COVID just to make sure that they're away. I would have made up some lie, and I can see my mom not caring. My mom would have busted in my door. I don't give an F. You're drinking. She was a warrior, man. I put her through some hell. But what would you? And speaking of that, what would you say to somebody who might be listening, who's like, man, my husband or my wife or friend, whatever, has been going at it and going at it and going at it, and maybe they're listening for like a little bit of advice or maybe a little bit of inspiration or hope of, how can I tell them that this is too much, without making them mad and without making them feel like a piece of shit, like what advice would you give to that person that wants to confront, I guess, the situation going on in their home?
That is a trick, and that is a not your question, but the answer is tricky because, as you know, every situation is so different. And I've had to confront that question in my coaching practice. Well, how do I get him to stop? How do I get her to stop? You don't. I'm not a fan of intervention. I don't really believe in it. That's a personal thing and a professional thing, but it's, we all take our practice a different direction. When I was in full speed drinking and still married and my wife would approach me on stuff like that, I just didn't want to hear it. And it wasn't because she was nagging or being anything other than, she was being incredibly loving and supportive. And I couldn't see that at the time because I was being incredibly drunk and selfish and trying to hide some stuff. So I guess if you're asking the question of how would you start the conversation because somebody's hammering it too hard, just, start with, hey, Corey, man, I love you. What's going on in your world? Let's talk. And then don't even talk about the booze. Don't talk about whatever the drug of choice is. Don't bring up, hey, you've been drinking hard. Just say, hey, I noticed some changes in you lately.